Okay, let us talk some materials. We will first and foremost, I'm back to my favorite crochet hook. Oh, how I have missed it. 3.5 is what we're working with today. You will need a yarn needle. You're gonna need some scissors, a stitch marker, which I have on my brace. We will need some yarn. This was kind of like a scrap yarn project for me. It's kind of sort of. I used a green. Obviously you'll need more than this, but this is what I'm left with after I was done. You are going to need some brown for the shell. You will also need some black. I put my black away already, but you need some black, and this is just for the smile, so literally you only need a little piece for the smile. Let's see, you will need some quilting pins. I always preface this by saying you don't actually need them, like for the structure of, like, in terms of materials to actually make the turtle, but it helps when we are assembling because it helps you to hold everything together. So optional, but highly recommended quilting pins. We have some new materials this time around. So measuring tape, this is going to help us to measure the paper that we're using for our message. You will need some cardstock, which I don't have in front of me for some reason, but cardstock, you don't have to use cardstock. Let me just say that. This is just something that's a little bit more sturdy if you choose to sell, if you choose to gift, things like that. So cardstock is recommended, but it's not like a must. You're gonna need some needle and thread. This is gonna help us attach our affirming message to our amigurumi. I was gonna say you could use the yarn, but you probably shouldn't. It's gonna leave a bigger hole and it's gonna look messy. So I would highly recommend the needle and thread for that one. And the eyes is the only other thing I forgot. So the eyes, we will need an 8mm this time around, which for me is right there. Oh, I need to get some more. An 8mm for the eyes. And I think oh, polyfill. We have a lot of materials this time around, y'all, but the end product is so cute. So polyfill you will need as well. I think that's it. That's enough. So let's go ahead and get into our project. Alrighty, let's start with the head of our turtle. Let me find my green yarn here, and we're gonna start with a magic circle. And in that magic circle, we're gonna do 6 single crochets. So there's my magic circle. 6 single crochets inside our magic circle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. We are going to pull this string right here to close our magic circle. Place our stitch marker. Row number 2, we are going to do an increase in each stitch, and what that means is you're going to go into that first stitch and put 2 single crochets because you're increasing, and in each stitch around you are putting 2 single crochets. So go ahead and do that all the way around in each stitch in this row, and I will meet you back here at the end. Row number 3 is going to be 1 single crochet and then an increase. So 1 single crochet and then an increase in the next one, which is 2 single crochets in the same stitch. So I'll show you again. 1 single crochet, and in that next stitch you're putting 2 single crochets, and you're going to follow that pattern all the way around. Row 4 is going to be 2 single crochets and then an increase. So same concept as the previous row, only difference is we're doing 2 single crochets and then an increase in the next stitch, which is 2 single crochets in the same stitch. So I'm going to show you again. 1 single crochet, another single crochet, and then 2 single crochets in the next stitch, and we're doing that all the way around. For rows 5 through 6, we are doing 1 single crochet in each. So nothing fancy for rows 5 and 6. literally just one single crochet in each stitch, and we are going to do that all the way around. So do your rows 5 and row 6 and meet me back here so we can do row 7 together. All right, so I did my rows 5 and 6, and now I'm on row number 7. And row number 7 is going to be our first round of decreases. So what we're doing is 2 single crochets, 1, 2, and a decrease, which means you're just pulling 2 stitches together. So I'll show you that again. 1 single crochet, another single crochet, and we're pulling 2 stitches together, and that's a decrease. And if you've never done decreases before and this is your first video, I do have beginner friendly videos towards the beginning of my channel that you can take a look to get some of these basic concepts down. So go ahead and do this all the way around, and I will meet you back here. Okay, so right now we are at row number 7, the end of row number 7. Before we start row number 8, this is a good time for us to place our eyes. So for this project, I am using an 8mm eyeball, which is right here. And what I'm gonna do is pop these guys in between rows 5 and 6. So the way I count my rows to place the eyes is I start at the magic circle and I count the rows. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So I'm gonna put my eyes in between rows 5 and 6. Now I'm going to put the eyes in stitches 1 and 7. And so what that means is I just dropped it in this sea of other sizes. There it is. There we go. So the way I count this, and you may see this differently other places, but the stitch that I put my eyeball in, I count as stitch number 1. So I'm gonna count 1 and then go to stitch number 6, and that's where I'm gonna put my second eye. So what I mean by that is that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I'm going to put the other one there. So that's what you should be looking like. And I'll pop the backs in these, and I'll meet you back here to start row number 8. Alright, now that our eyes are in, we can start row number 8, which is very similar to row number 7 in that we are still decreasing, but this time around we are doing 1 single crochet and then a decrease. Let me show you that again. 1 single crochet and then a decrease, and we're doing that all the way around. And our final row, row number 9, is decreases all the way around, meaning that you're just pulling 2 stitches together all the way around. That was my first decrease, my second decrease, and I'm going to do that all the way around. Alright, and this is what our head should be looking like. You do need to stuff this, and what I usually do to help is get like a pencil or even the back of your crochet hook, stuff that stuffing in there, and then you can meet me back here so we can start the body. Alright, and this is what my head is looking like right now. I did fasten off and I left a pretty decent tail because we do need a tail to sew our head to our body. So we can move this one aside and we can start on our body now. So I am going to use the same color green that I did for my head, and I am essentially going to repeat rows 1 through 4. I'll do it on camera with you, but if you want to just kind of go to your own devices, we are repeating rows 1 through 4. So we're going to start with the magic circle, and I am going to go through this kind of quickly because we just did this together, so I'm going to go fairly quickly. So I did my magic circle. That was 1 single crochet. We're doing a total of 6. That's 3, 4, 5, 6. Close this circle. Row number 2 is going to be our row of increases. And remember, that was 2 single crochets in each stitch, just like so. And we did that all the way around. So go ahead and do that and meet me back for row number 3, excuse me. Row 3, remember, was 1 single crochet, then an increase, 1 single crochet, and then an increase, 1 single crochet, and then an increase all the way around. And row 4, remember, was 2 single crochets and an increase. 1, 2, and then an increase. 1, 2, and then an increase all the way around. Row number 5, same concept. We are just adding 3 single crochets and then an increase. So same concept, 1, 2, 3, and then an increase. And just in case you need to see it again, let's go again. 1, 2, 3, and then an increase. And we're going to do that all the way around until we reach our stitch marker. Rows 6 through 8 is 1 single crochet in each stitch. 1 single crochet in every single stitch. Nothing fancy. So go ahead and do this for row 6, row 7, and row 8, and meet me back here so we can do row 9 together. Alrighty, so I have done my row 6 through 8, and this is what I'm looking like. Row number 9 is going to be 3 single crochets and then a decrease. So same concept as we did in the head with the decreases, but this time we're starting with 3. So that was 1 single crochet, 2 single crochets, 3 single crochets, and a decrease. Remember, decrease means we're pulling those stitches together. So let me show you again. That was 1, 2, 3, and then a decrease. And we're doing that all the way around. Row 10 is 2 single crochets and then a decrease. 1 single crochet, 2 single crochets, and then a decrease. 1 single crochet, 2 single crochets, and then a decrease, and we're doing that all the way around. Row 11 is 1 single crochet and then a decrease. 1 single crochet and then a decrease. 1 single crochet and then a decrease all the way around. Row 12 is our final row, and it's going to be decreases all the way around, just like we did in the head. If you found that the head was a little bit too tight for you to stuff, because some people prefer to stuff before it gets that tight, I am not one of those people. I like to stuff once my crocheting is done. So I am actually going to do row number 12 before I stuff, but if you found, again, that the head was a little bit too tight for you, this might be a good position for you to go ahead and stuff and then do row 12 after. So if you're rocking with me and you're following me exactly, I'm gonna go ahead and do my row number 12 and then stuff. But again, that option is there for you. I just want to put that little tip in there because sometimes folks don't like, to stuff when the hole gets too tight. So row number 12 is going to be decreases all the way around. We're just pulling those 2 stitches together all the way around. And then I'm going to stuff off camera once I finish row number 12, and I'll meet you back here, show you the finished product for the body, and then we can start our shell. Alright, this is what I'm looking like all stuffed. There is a hole left once we fasten off and, do leave that long tail for sewing. I am going to close this hole. You don't necessarily have to, because when we make our shell is actually going to go on top of this. This is going to be the belly. So you don't technically need to close this hole, but I mean, just because I know it's there, I'm going to close it. It's going to bother me a little bit. And so to close this, I'm just going into each of these stitches, like going into one and then pulling up in the other and just pulling this guy tight. See how it just closes? And I'm really not worried about it being too neat because, again, the shell's going over it. So if there's some polyfill that peeks through like you have here, it's totally fine. It's not going to be seen. I just want to close the hole, And so just knot this and then hide this tail in our work. because we actually don't need the tail to sew. I just needed it for closing that hole up. And we can cut it. Again, I'm gonna stress, we don't have to worry about making this too pretty because our shell is gonna cover that. So speaking of shell, let's go ahead and start that. So I am using, maybe if I can find the end, I'm using a brown. Where's the end? Oh, there, there it is. I'm using a brown. Okay, so I'm actually gonna leave you for a bit, and I want you to leave me as well, because we are going to repeat the body, rows 1 through 5. That was starting with our magic circle with 6 single crochets in our magic circle. We did our increases all the way up to 3 single crochets in an increase, and I'll pop the pattern on the screen so you can pause and go ahead and crochet. Meet me back here for row number 6. Okay, I'll see you soon. Okay, so I have done rows 1 through 5, and now I'm going to do row number 6. And row number 6 is 4 single crochets and an increase. Row number 5 left off with 3 single crochets and increase. This one we're going to do 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then an increase, 2 single crochets in that next stitch. And go ahead and do that all the way around. And that is it. We are going to cut, leave a fairly long tail because we will need this tail to sew our shell to our body. Go ahead and fasten that off, and just for context so you can see what we're looking like, our shell is going to attach like that, and our head is going to sit on top just like this. So we're just about there. We just need to do our flippers. So let's start with the larger flipper. I'm going back to my green, and the flippers are really simple, you guys, like really simple. So we are starting with that magic circle again. So funny, my mom and my daughter hates the magic circle, and I literally use it in everything. Okay, inside our magic circle we are doing 6, just like we've done with all the rest of our body parts. That was 3 for me, 4, 5, 6. The larger flipper is only 3 rows. That was row number 1. Row number 2 is an increase. 1, 2 in that one stitch. Next one we're going to do 2 more because again this is a row of increases. So go ahead and do yours and meet me back here. Our final row, row number 3, is 1 single crochet and an increase, and we've already done these, so I'm gonna do them kind of quickly. 1 single crochet and an increase all the way around. Okay, this is what our flipper is looking like so far. It doesn't really look very flippery, but that's because what we need to do next is fold this thing in half. I fold this in half such that the point where we are right now, where our stitch marker is a corner. See that? Where that's a corner right now. And what we are going to do is add 1 single crochet across this little curve. So I'm going to start with this stitch here, and I'm pulling up a stitch on this side and a stitch on the other side and just doing a single crochet. So pulling up a stitch on this side, pulling up a stitch on the other side, pulling through both of them to complete my single crochet. Just like this. And I'm doing this all the way down. And this is going to help our flipper look more like a flipper. Again, just pulling up a stitch on each side, all the way to the very end. And you want to fasten off. Do leave a tail because we will need the tail to attach the flipper to the body. I can now remove my stitch marker that was just letting me know where we started. And you see how we look like a flipper now? Alright, So we need 2 of those. We need 2 large ones and 2 small ones. I will do my second one off camera, and we'll go into our small flipper now actually, and then I'll do the second ones off camera after. Okay, so the small flipper is actually the same first 2 rows as the larger flipper. So we are starting with a magic circle, 6 single crochets inside of our magic circle. That was 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And we are doing increases for row number 2. Two single crochets in each stitch. And you're doing that all the way around. The next step is the same concept as the larger flipper. So right now it's not looking very flipper-esque. So I'm actually need to cut that tail from when we did our magic circle. So same thing as with the larger flipper. Fold this guy so that where your stitch marker is a corner. This one is going to be a little bit tighter, so just kind of take that warning. But you still want to get a stitch on each side of your work and pull it together. Stitch on this side, stitch on that side, and pull it together. And sometimes I do need to like skip a stitch on either side just because, you know, they weren't lined up exactly, and that's okay. That's okay. If you needed to do that, that's totally fine. So let me just get one more in here. And I can fasten off. Again, leave a long tail because we will need those tails to attach our flippers to our body. Alright. So this is what our larger flipper looks like, the one on the right, and our smaller flipper is the one on the left. Okay, let me go ahead and do my other ones off camera. Remember, you need 2 of these, 2 of those, so go ahead and do one more off camera and I will meet you back here for assembly. Alrighty, I am back and I have all of my pieces here. I have my shell, my body, the head, 2 small flippers, and 2 large flippers. So what we need to do now is assemble this thing. What I like to do, my process, is to put everything together using these quilting pins and then sew after. This doesn't have to be your process, but it's just my process so I can kind of gauge where everything should be before I start sewing, because the worst thing in the world is to start sewing and you later in the game figure out that you really don't like where everything is placed. So this is why I do this. What I'm doing now is just taking a quilting pin, inserting it into the center of that magic circle, and I'm going to insert the other end of that pin into the center of that body, being very careful because I have poked myself so many times with it going through the other end. So I am actually going to put some additional pins in here just to stabilize this a little bit so I can actually see what I'm doing. Okay, so I am going to determine this is going to be the top of my turtle. So what I'm going to do is get a larger pin, stick it through the center of my head, and come all the way through. Can you see that? And go ahead and stick it where I think I want to place my head. I am putting it just slightly in front of the shell. See how like the neck is slightly in front of the shell? Because that's kind of nothing. That's where I want to put my head. I'm gonna anchor this with some additional pins. Yes, it is very pin heavy for me over here, only because I want to make sure I like the placement. Okay, that looks good to me. And what I need to do is the flippers. And so I want the larger flipper to be on the top. And I want to position my flippers such that the magic circle, which is right there, is pointing up. The side where we did those joining single crochets is actually pointing down. So you want it positioned like this. And so I am going to see if I like mine right here. And remember, this little guy, if you choose to put the affirmation note on there, is going to be holding the note. So we want to make sure we're keeping that in mind. And I want mine right on the edge of my shell, and I think I like it right there. And so let's do the same thing with this one. And I'll give you some locations in a second once I get everything squared away. Okay, I think I like that. So what this is looking like for me is I have my flipper about 1, 2, 3, about 4 stitches from my head. So counting the first stitch here, about 4 stitches down is where I have my arms. And then my legs, let's see. Again, magic circle pointing up. That curve that we added those single crochets is going to be pointing down. And let's see, where do we want to put this one? Ooh, I like it right there. Okay, so that is about 1, 2, 3, 4, about 4 to 5 stitches below the larger flipper. I just poked myself. It happens to me every time. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, about, I said 4 to 5. So it'll be about right there. All right. Very cool. What I just realized is I didn't put the smile on our guy. So once I detach this head, I'll show you how I'm going to make that smile. But this is what I'm looking like. And I do think I like the positioning of everything. So what I will do, actually, let me move this up a little bit. There we go. You have two options. You can sew as the pins are there, or if you kind of remember where everything was placed, you can just remove everything and then sew as you go. It's totally up to you. I don't know which method I'm going to do just yet, but I do need to show you how to put the smile on there. So let's do that first. I'm going to detach my head without destroying the placement of everything else. There we go. And the head, I mean, the smile is really simple. It would be if I had some black yarn. Okay, I found it. Let us thread a yarn needle. You don't need a very long tail, but you need a decent size. And what I'm going to do here is just go into an arbitrary location, doesn't really matter where. I'm going to pull up in the row underneath the eyes. So remember, we attached the eyes between rows 5 and 6. I'm going to go into row number 7, and I'm going to use those 3 stitches in the center. Can you see those? So 1, 2, 3. So I'm going to pull up. Okay, that doesn't work. So I'm going to go here then. So that was that first stitch, and I'm gonna go over 2 stitches, 1, 2, so that we're covering those center 3. And I'm just gonna go through the center. It doesn't really matter. So we're looking like a meh expression right now, right? We're gonna go back through the center right here, which is where I chose to go. We're gonna come up through the row underneath that line. Can you see that? The row underneath the line in the center. Next, what you want to do, let me just get that polyfill out the way. You want to take your yarn needle, go on top and over the line we just made. So it should look something like that. Go ahead and pull that yarn through, just like that. You're then going to go back into that center hole on the bottom row right here. This time around though, you're going to come out in that first place you stuck that black yarn when we first started. When you pull, you'll see the smile. And let me get a little closer so you can see. When you pull, you'll start to see the smile. You see that? And I'm just adjusting both my strings so that the smile is how I want it to be. Once you've got it the way you want it, you literally just knot this. I usually knot twice. And because we came in and exited, in the same hole, we can just insert our yarn back in there, and it's actually going to hide our tails. Let me show you. We go back in and it hides our tails. You see that? Can't even see it. And so this excess, you can choose to cut it, or you can just wrap it and stick it in, which is what I usually do, because in the weird event that that smile comes undone, it won't come out because you have your yarn all tangled up in the polyfill. So that's the reason why I do it that way. See that? All right, so back to this guy. What I think I'm gonna do is remove everything and then sew, because I think I remember where everything was. So I'm going to probably just do a speed through this so that you can see what I'm doing without actually having to sit there and see what I'm doing. All right, so here we go. All right, so this is what we are looking like so far. Now, if you choose to keep your guy the way it is, then you're done. He stands up or what have you, right? If you choose to go with the affirmations like I'm going to do, what's the easiest I've found is to get a post-it first. We are going to use a cardstock to print our note and attach it to our guy, but to make sure we get the dimensions just right, I'm using a post-it note first. And I'm just taking the sticky part off because it gets a little bit annoying on the post-it. So I'm going to cut this around the size I think it might be and adjust as necessary on my turtle. Once I get my dimension just right, I'll let you know what it is. Keep in mind though, yours may be different than mine because tension matters. If your tension was tighter, your turtle is going to be smaller than mine. If your tension was looser, your turtle is going to be larger than mine. So you can use the dimensions I use for my paper, but just again keep that in mind that it may be a little bit off. All right, so I'm just putting the paper in the position I think I want it once it's done to see if that's correct, and just adjusting as necessary. All right, that might do it. Yeah, that's the way I want it. And so now what I want to do is get a measuring tape and measure roughly the size of this. So I'm looking at about a 1.5. About a 1.5 by 1.25 maybe. I'm wondering if I can do 1.25 by 1.25. That's a little bit bigger than 1.25, but I wonder if I can get away with that. Yeah, I think I'll do that. So I'm gonna go with a 1.25 all the way around for my square. So what I'm going to do off camera is I'm gonna grab my cardstock, grab my computer, print this message out 1.25 by 1.25, and I'll meet you back here to attach it. Alright, so I went ahead and printed my message. This is what I'm going to say. Slow days, tired days, messy days, you're still a good mama. I thought that was really cute. So what I did on my computer was just create a table. And the table dimensions were 1.25 by 1.25 because that is what we identified as the best fit. Now, if you do not have a printer or a computer or what have you, you can definitely write this message. You can get a good old pen and paper. It doesn't have to be cardstock either. And you can go ahead and write the message. If you're going to sell this, if you are going to, sell it, I think is the only other way I would recommend to print. Find a way to print it. It just looks a little bit better. Okay, so now that we have our message and we have our finished turtle, what we are going to do, I'm not going to pin this in place because we don't want the holes to show on our work. What we're going to do is try to fit. I positioned this in such a way that it had kind of spaces on both sides so that we can attach the hands there. The yarn needle is going to be too thick for this, so what I've actually done is got needle and thread. I've already threaded my needle, and we're going to use this because it leaves a hole still, but it's a very minimal hole that we can cover with the hand. So what I'm going to do is make sure the tip of my flipper is on either side of that message, just like that. Okay, and make sure our message is straight first of all. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go into an arbitrary place. It's probably easier to go through the bottom. And I'm going to come up through the side of the belly right here. I don't know if you can see that needle come through. And just for reference, my magic circle is here. So like 1, 2, between rows 2 and 3 would be a good place. And again, tension does matter. So make sure you double check, everything before you just take my word for the stitches or the size of the paper and things like that. So because I centered my text, again, I have those spaces on the side, and I'm just going to pull up in one of those spaces on the right hand side, just like this, with my needle. And I'm going to come up in the tip of my flipper. The color of your thread doesn't really matter because the thread is so small relative to the yarn. It's going to hide itself. So don't worry too much about the color. You can see I have a white thread and my work is green. So it's not going to matter too much. So we came up through the flipper. We want to go back in the flipper. And this is just going to anchor our flipper. And we're going back into that same hole. And into the same hole in the back also. And we're coming up in that same hole over here. Just like that. Making sure everything doesn't get tangled. That is my one pet peeve with using thread, is that literally this stuff is so small that it gets tangled. Okay, sorry, I had to pull off camera because the bottom of my tail actually came off, so I had to redo it. Okay, but we are good now. That is what we're looking like so far. Now, what I like to do is actually knot this and cut this piece of thread and start new for the other side. It is a personal preference. You do not have to do that. But the reason I do that is because, let's say I just told you off camera I had to rethread and kind of redo that that side. What happens if everything comes undone from both sides? Like, it's just a pain in the butt. So I have learned to do one side at a time. You do not have to do that, but this is my process. So off camera right now, I'm just threading my needle as I'm yapping so that I can show you how to do the other side. It's essentially the same thing, but for my visual learners out there, I just want to show you how I do this. Okay, so I'm all threaded. Personally, I choose a different hole to go in. I'm going to adjust this guy to make sure I know kind of where I want to put that second hole. And I am again in, let me see if you can see that, magic circle. So it's 1, 2, in between rows 2 and 3. I'm pulling up here. And I am going into that space again. Really no exact science here. Going into my flipper. Making sure everything is nice and straight. I'm going back into my flipper. I'm going into that hole again and back into my work to come up into that same hole that we came in. I gotta find it. There it is. And we are just going to pull everything nice and slow because, again, thread does get tangled and it's super annoying when it does. There you go. And we're just pulling it so that you can't see the thread in our flipper and you can't see the thread on the inside of your work. And there we go. So now I can just knot these. Where is it? It's right there. So I can knot both of these guys and just hide these threads in my work. I'm poking myself like crazy. And there we have it. I'm gonna hide these off camera because that's just not interesting, but that is what we're looking like. So let me hide this so you get the full effect and I'll meet you back here. All right, and this is what our guy is looking like. Oh my gosh, so cute, so cute. Yeah, this is everything. I actually made this pattern for one of my best friends. She her kid's favorite animal is a turtle, and so I actually posted a possum, and then she was like, hey, you know, can you create a turtle for me? And I was like, absolutely I can. So this is where the idea came about, and I was like, you know what, I bet other people will want to do something of the like, and it'll be kind of cool for Mother's Day. So that's kind of the inception of the idea. So shout out to Book Bestie for that. All right, so what can you do with this pattern to make it your own? One thing that immediately stood out to me is you could attach these bottom flippers so that it looks like the turtle's kind of cradling the words. That would be kind of cute. You could definitely change the message. I wanted to gear these affirmation amigurumi creatures this month more towards moms, so all of the messages this month will be towards mothers, but you definitely could change this so that it says something different. If you want to just as an affirmation for yourself or a friend or what have you, you definitely could change that. Another thing you can do is change the color of your turtle. When I originally did this for my best friend, I actually had a lighter green, and so this time around I decided to do a darker green because I don't know, I thought it was kind of cute. So definitely changing the color could help as well. So I always say the possibilities are only limited by your creativity, and you're a pretty darn creative person, so have at it. Hopefully this was impactful for you. Hopefully you had a lot of fun with it. I had a lot of fun with it for the second time around. So yeah, thanks for stopping by. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe, don't forget to hit that bell icon so you know when I post new content, which is literally every single Monday. Has been for about a year now. We have reached our anniversary, so thank you so much for rocking out with me. There's a lot going on in the world. Make sure you stay up to date on information to keep you and your family safe and crochet some cool stuff. Until next time, y'all.